George Zimmerman back in jail because his wife lied on the bond application.
That's correct. And the judge took umbrage with that, but that's not really the guts of the thing. It's what's going to play out here, you know. And since I spoke to you last, the prosecutors, as they're required to do, have to release all their evidence and information.
Right.
And there's certainly evidence that he had been in a he being Zimmerman had been in a scrape, a fight, or a confrontation of some sort. And that really helps him potentially from a defense standpoint, because the whole issue there is going to be whether or not the stand your ground law is going to allow him to be acquitted of I think it's second degree murder charge, if I remember correctly, that they brought. And the more physical evidence there is that supports his position that the young man had become the aggressor, and that he was in fact in fear for his life, the more likely it is that a jury is going to find that the law protects him under those circumstances. It's going to be interesting to see. If he was unmarked, that's one thing, but he's got the cuts and the bruises and the abrasions, which were photographed right after the fact, that would support his position that he was defending himself, and that's going to be something the prosecution is going to have to overcome. This stand your ground law is under tremendous scrutiny right now, as I think it should be. You and I have discussed the stand your ground law since it was debated in the legislature, passed, and signed into law in Florida. That's how new it is, really. And I think you and I, some of our listeners were concerned about it from the beginning, and certainly there's a lot of people that support the law, but it's going to be on very public display in this trial. And I've got cases that are similar to this. One of them involves a police officer, and the one witness is gone. Martin can't testify. My victim in my case can't testify,
and neither can Trayvon.
And neither can Trayvon Martin. So that certainly gives an advantage to Zimmerman. It's going to be fascinating to see how what a jury does with that if it gets to a jury.
Gino, what do you think?
You don't know how it started, but that's the question is whether or not that matters. That's a that's your point is a good one. The question of who instigated it is huge, and there's thought. The parents of Trayvon Martin are taking the position. Look, at worst, this law should be modified so that the jury should be allowed to consider who started the altercation. But as of right now, I don't think legally, Gino. Now, practically speaking, it may matter. Legally, it may not. It may not matter at all. It's a question of, and I'm facing that exact same issue. In the 1983 action that we've got going in federal court, where the young man was shot and killed, and the issue is, we're trying to argue to the federal court that the jury should be allowed to consider who was the aggressor here, how we got to where we were, so that the officer put himself in a position unnecessarily and inappropriately of having to allegedly defend himself and shoot this young man. And the same principles, interestingly, I think apply in this Trayvon Martin case, but right now it's tough. Yeah, that's the old castle doctrine, and that doctrine's been in effect in the state of Florida and throughout the country for years and years and years. And what happened was, the law said that if you don't have to retreat 1 inch if someone's on your property, you're in fear, you can do whatever's necessary to protect you and your family on your own property, and that hasn't changed at all. What Stand Your Ground did is it expanded that immunity. It made it unlimited, Gino. It took us out of our homes and our property in terms of being able to defend ourselves with deadly force. Before, you always had to retreat, right? When you're not on your property, you had to retreat. You can't, if this guy's coming after you, you got to make an effort to get away from him. You can't just shoot him. And that's what Stand Your Ground law has changed. And it's a very fundamental change, and we predicted on this show that, look, this is gonna come home to roost, and boy, it didn't take very long for it to come home to roost, and the question is, we don't know how it's gonna play out in this case. I think that's true, but that's another issue. Whether you're carrying the firearm appropriately, legally or illegally, the issue here is once you get to the point of I'm in fear for my life and I have a weapon and I used it to defend myself, and yes, I killed this person to defend myself, that implicates the stand your ground law, even if you did everything wrong to get there. And you can certainly argue that this Zimmerman guy, from what I've seen, did everything wrong in terms of following this kid and setting up this confrontation. I'm not sure that matters when he takes the stand and says, hey, that may all be true, but here's what happened. He became the aggressor. He was going for my gun. I had to do this, otherwise he was going to shoot and kill me. I'd have to. You may be right. I'd have to look at that. Is that an issue here with Zimmerman? Whether or not he was carrying the weapon legally or illegally?
Okay.
Yeah, for consideration by the jury as opposed to having the court throw it out. They'll take a run at immunity, but the court, I think, will deny that. Well, I appreciate it's good to talk to you again. I know you've been waiting for
patient.
me.
Not even patient.
Not even
No, I wasn't
patiently.
patient at all.
Well, I look forward to many more discussions, Gino. You have a great day. All right, come by and see us at the new office.
Good morning, everybody. Hippo's in the house. We got sports up next.